Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, September 11th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Western Kentucky game is in 5 days. The game against Michigan in 75 days. We're going to be talking about two very, very different things on today's show. A little later on, we're going to have our buddy Alex Gleitman on to look back at some of the guys who were in town for Ohio State, visiting recruits over the weekend at the Youngstown State game to open the season. A couple names that were kind of notable there because they're committed to other schools and could potentially be flip candidates for Ohio State. So we're going to talk to Alex about that a little bit later on. But first, wanted to let you hear a little bit from Ryan Day, Kyle McCord, and Devin Brown, the quarterback situation. Obviously, the big story around this year's Ohio State team, whether it's the biggest concern around this year's Ohio State team, is probably a separate conversation. It is certainly the biggest story around the team. So let's start with Ryan Day. Let's just let him weigh in on Kyle McCord's play just overall against Youngstown State.
I thought he came out of the gate, I think there was, something maybe in the back end early on for them that they, but he found it, found Marvin, then hit the play action. I think early in games like this, how you play matters. And I like how he came out of the gates playing well. They're fresh. They're playing their best football in that first quarter. And you want to see us playing good football. And, he made some nice throws early on, and that was good. And he got himself into a rhythm and showed, that he can make some of those throws, and that's important. And I thought even in the 2-minute drill, I know he wants that first one back. He's got to get that ball out of his hand a little bit faster. The second one, Marv did drop. That's rare that he drops one. And then he was smart on third down and not forcing it. So, overall, I thought he was solid, but we'll look at the film and see.
Whenever you're breaking in a new starting quarterback, you always have a pretty tight leash on him for a little while. Don't let him change plays nearly as much as you might later on in his career. So has Kyle McCord now earned a little bit more leeway to change things up if he wants to? You'll hear that answer and then a follow-up from Clay Hall from Channel 6 in Columbus.
I think as we start to get more games under our belt, you'll start to see more and more open up. But, he looked more comfortable for sure in this game. And, every time you play, and that's why we try to get Devin more snaps to get kind of those first things flushed out. Things maybe you saw Kyle in the first game, that way, you saw maybe a little bit with Devin in this game. But I don't think Kyle really missed any throws, maybe a read or two. I guess maybe there was a couple, but I thought he was much more efficient in this game. I think he was more comfortable back there. At least it looked that way to me.
He's not the full-fledged starter yet.
We'll see. We'll look at the film and kind of evaluate it after we watch the film and go from there. And like I said, we'll take it week to week.
When you have the quarterback pedigree that Ryan Day has, in terms of guys just being in Columbus and just developing and turning into first-round quarterbacks over and over and over again, it's probably a little bit unfair to then have the new guy just immediately get compared to all of those guys, Wayne Haskins, Justin Fields, and C.J. Stroud. But it's kind of the reality of the world. So even though it is kind of unfair, does Ryan Day maybe see some similarities between Kyle McCord and one or more of those previous guys?
It is hard to compare to other quarterbacks, but I think the more you play, the better you see it. And, I remember that first game against Minnesota. CJ struggled in that first half and then really calmed down in the second half. And then did some really good things in the Oregon game, threw a couple balls into coverage in that game. But there was enough in that game to say, ooh, we might have something here. Even though we lost the game and people were coming at him hard. He threw over 400 yards in that game because we had to. We didn't do a good job running the ball there. And then you could start to see it develop over time. And it was a tough stretch in there, but you think about Dwayne, I just kind of felt like Dwayne saw it. You could kind of see that early on. Justin, that was a little bit different. It took him until almost past the Michigan State game before he really got it. But he was so athletic, he could make plays with his feet. So I guess I go through those guys because you ask about his predecessors. And I don't think we'll know the answer to that until we get a few more games in. The same thing with Devin. Because when you're seeing it for the first, I remember being a quarterback. It's like, what you put the film on, you're like, what did I see? And then the next time you do it, you're like, oh, okay. And then sometimes you come out of games, you're like, I don't even know what just happened in that game. I just found the flow of the game. I found the rhythm of the game. And that's something we talk to our quarters about. Find the speed of the game. Because if you're too slow, not good. If you're too fast, not good. And that's part of playing this game. And so we tried to get both guys into a rhythm early on. Sort of did that. We'll continue to try to do that.
With the Notre Dame game now just being 2 weeks out, is there maybe a little bit more urgency around the program to get that one guy all of the reps in practice and not be splitting the reps with the ones between two different quarterbacks?
I don't know. We'll probably get on this film, figure out what this next week looks like, and then we'll figure out Notre Dame when we get there. But I think, again, it's a legitimate question. Yeah, I don't have the answer for you right now, but I understand what you're asking. We're just going to focus on Western Kentucky now and do the best we can to grow this week. This isn't about winning this game. Certainly, we have to win this game, but we have big goals in mind. We're building this thing for the long run, and we have high expectations. We want to be perfect. We know where we need to be. So we're not accepting anything other than excellence. And we know what that looks like. And it isn't just built in 1 week. So we're growing towards that. The guys are into it. They know what it takes. And, we've been in a situation where, early in the season, it feels like, okay, we're going right to the national championship. It doesn't work that way. You have to build the foundation the right way for the long haul. And I think our guys are bit into that and understand that. So we just need another great week of work this week and keep learning and pushing and getting these guys as many reps as we can.
All right, now let's hear a little bit from Kyle McCord after the game. That first start at Indiana was okay. There were some up and down moments for sure. Ryan Day after that game called it a little bit of a mixed bag. So the second game against Youngstown State felt like he was a little more consistent, and you, of course, have to adjust for competition there. But was there something that Kyle McCord felt like he did in week 2 against Youngstown State that he didn't do in week 1 against Indiana?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just coming out of the gate and just, trusting my reads, trusting my arm, trusting the players around me. And I think we showed flashes of that last week for sure, but we were just spotty. And I feel like, especially in the first half today, came out strong and got things going. I got the ball in the receiver's hands, and they did some really good things after the catch. We aired it out a little bit, so I think it was a good mixture. And as long as we can continue to build that, I think we'll be in a really good spot offensively.
Ryan Day talked about the fact that Kyle McCord seemed like maybe he was a little bit more calm, in control of his emotions, maybe in week 2 rather than week 1. And that would sort of make sense. You're playing at home in front of your home crowd against a team that is not nearly as good as the Indiana defense that you faced a week ago when that was on the road. So was Kyle McCord did he really feel better just internally? Was there a difference internally this week? Maybe a little bit more in control of his emotions and the game?
Yeah, I think last week, especially first start of the new year, season opener on the road, Big Ten team, there's a lot that goes into it. And I wouldn't necessarily call them distractions, but there's just a lot of things that go into that game. And once you get that game over with, got the win, and then got into the flow of a normal week with the practice schedule and then just, our routine, and just kind of eased into it a little bit more so than I would say the first week. So I think definitely the emotions are just more calm more than anything. I feel like I think that definitely helps in the long run.
And finally, let's let you hear a little bit from Devin Brown. He's the second guy to come in for each of the first 2 games. Feels like, maybe the quarterback competition is starting to wind up a little bit as the Buckeyes enter that 3rd game of the season against Western Kentucky. But what does Devin Brown think? Does he still feel like he's in the race for the starting quarterback job?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've always felt like I was in the race. That's never going to change for me. I'm always going to think I'm the guy, but we just got to do what's best for the team, and that's what we're doing. When our numbers called, we go out there and help this team win.
Now, Devin Brown was asked after the game how he would grade his performance against Youngstown State, and he gave himself a C, which, on the whole, that's probably a pretty fair grade. He might be a little bit of a tough grader, but that's probably in the ballpark. So he was asked why. Why would he give himself a C? You're going to hear that answer, and then you're going to hear a follow-up from Stephen Means of Cleveland.com about what Devin Brown liked about his performance and what he didn't like.
Just missing throws. Got to complete those easy throws. Like I said, I didn't think I had anything that was mentally wrong or any reads that were bad. Just missed a few easy throws.
What did you like about your day and what you not like?
Yeah, I think last year.
I felt like I had good energy. I felt like I had good leadership. I felt like I was really rallying the guys. I mean, I think 2 out of the 3 drives I was in, we went down and scored. I'd like to score on the 3rd one, but overall, I think it was a pretty good day for my first time, having meaningful reps and me playing.
All right, so now you've heard from Ryan Day and the 2 quarterbacks. Now you're going to hear from our buddy Alex Gleitman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Had a couple visitors in town over the weekend who are committed to other schools. Wanted to check in with Alex on updates on both of those guys. But also, Alex, let's start with the quarterback position. Everyone has an opinion on this. We just heard from Ryan Day and Kyle McCord and Devin Brown, their thoughts after the game. I have shared my thoughts that I think it's maybe time for them to kind of make a decision and play one guy. What do you think? Where do you think the quarterback battle stands after 2 weeks? And, is it time to make a decision and move on, or can they kind of let this play out a little longer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not someone who's like, I need to be right all the time, but I really don't see how there's multiple opinions on this thing. At this point, it's pretty clear. You saw what happened in a closer than expected game against Indiana in week 1, how they used Devin Brown versus how they used Kyle McCord. And I think you obviously, week 2 against Youngstown State, Kyle got the start. He still played the majority of the time. They did work Devin in more. But I think to me, it's pretty clear, number one, that the coaches feel that Kyle McCord is better suited to be the quarterback of the football team. And I think from watching the games, I mean, you can't really judge game 1 for Devin Brown. That's not totally fair for him. But I think watching Kyle McCord, especially in the second half of the Indiana game, and then seeing him pretty much in apples to apples against Youngstown State versus Devin Brown, I think, to me, it's pretty clear that Kyle McCord is the better choice for this football team. And I think that one drive Brown led, the first one, was a microcosm to me of why he's not the guy. He took that on third down. There was a blitz. And the minute there was the sign of pressure, he kind of panicked a little bit and threw an errant pass that could have been an easy crossing route to Emeka Egbuka for minimum a first down, if not more. But then you saw they went for it on fourth down, and he scrambled out of the pocket, extended the play, and was able to make a really impressive pass to convert the first down. And so there's going to be wow plays like that, but I think the simple plays where you need to step up in the pocket or hang in the pocket and make that throw, that's a play he's got to make, and he's not making that. And that's what I've heard all throughout camp, is that Kyle has been more consistent. Devin has had more wow moments, if you will. And I think, just being a little bit of a better athlete, you're probably going to get that. But I think, anyone with 2 eyes who watched this game fairly and objectively could have seen that Kyle McCord is the guy. And I think the coaches know that. I think they're going to end this thing. I think Kyle is going to, I'm not saying Devin Brown won't play against Western Kentucky, but I think they're going to get Kyle as many reps as they can as with the first team, as if it was like CJ Stroud last year, for example, because he's got to get ready for Notre Dame. And I think they want Devin to get reps because he's never really had reps before. And if something happens with Kyle McCord, if he gets hurt, or, midway through the season, he's just not getting it done, and they want to make a change at that position, they can't just throw in Devin Brown without really having any sort of experience. So I think that while the competition has been quote unquote open, I really think that they've known it's been Kyle McCord since they really named him the starter before week 1 in Indiana.
One thing that I think probably will help for, some of the scenarios you laid out there where, there's an injury or just lack of performances, Brown has gotten a lot more snaps during fall camp than a typical backup would, because they have considered this an open competition, and they've run 2 practice fields at the same time and all that kind of stuff. So he's gotten a lot more reps, but how often do we hear from the coaches that the practice reps are great, but you don't know until the game, until it's a game. And we have talked about Devin Brown as a running threat because he is more athletic, I think, in some ways than Kyle McCord, like you said. But that's one of those things where even when we see him in practice, he's got that black jersey on. So it's like trying to judge, okay, how much of a running threat is a quarterback just by watching the spring game. And everyone in the building knows you can't hit the quarterback in the spring game. So yeah, it's real easy to look good, and guys have to pull up before they get to you, so you look like you're jetting past people. It felt like maybe we got a better sense that, yeah, he's mobile, but he's not, Michael Vick or anything back there. So it feels like that might play into this, that maybe, the passer versus the runner isn't necessarily quite as clear a division as maybe we were sort of led to believe.
Yeah, and I also think that, Kyle, people thought he was, Peyton Manning, where he's kind of just a statue and he can't move. I think you've seen Kyle McCord pull it down and run the ball a little bit. I'm not saying they want him doing that all the time. He's certainly not Michael Vick, and Devin Brown is certainly more athletic and faster than him, I would say. But yeah, I mean, I don't think, to your point, it's not like we got Justin Fields versus versus Kyle McCord here. It's closer than you would think in the athleticism category. And I think, just another year in the system. I don't know. I don't really get the take that people who watch or have watched this game, like, how do you not like what you've seen out of Kyle McCord? I don't get it. He throws a good ball. He's been accurate. He's made some NFL throws, in my opinion, thrown in tight windows. Is he making mistakes? Yeah, but I mean, CJ Stroud, everyone points to, well, his second game against Oregon, he threw for 450 yards. But what about his third game against Tulsa? He was terrible, and people were calling for freshman Kyle McCord to kind of, come in and take his spot there. So sometimes these guys just need to get their legs under them. And I will say this, like, I think if Devin Brown, I don't think Devin Brown would be ready to start in South Bend in 2 weeks. But I think if you gave Devin Brown, I think, the starting job this year, I think by halfway, 6, 7, 8, by the Penn State game, I think he'd be like a much better quarterback than what we saw the other day. So these guys, I know they're 5 stars and you expect them to come in and be amazing. I'm on a little tangent here. I went off the topic, but I just think it's really important to understand that this game's at a different speed. It's at a different level of competition. All the guys they're playing against are Kyle McCord level or Devin Brown level guys, and this is really their first action. So as you said, Tom, it's like the spring game's great, the practices are great, the fall camp's great, but until you get into that real game situation, you really can't. It doesn't matter how many mental reps or practice reps or whatever you took, you still need that experience in the games to get better. And I think Kyle McCord is going to get better and better. I think Devin Brown, with every rep he takes, is going to get better and better. So I personally have no qualms about the Ohio State quarterback position. For me, it's the offensive line and the defense. I'll say the defense as a whole, I still need to see them against good teams get it done, because obviously we saw what happened, Michigan, Georgia, even Maryland at the end of last year. Defensive line has been a little underwhelming, and we'll see what the back seven has this week against Western Kentucky. So for me, it's offensive line is the most concerning thing. The defense would probably, just making sure they're good, would be number 2. Quarterback, I just feel like they'll get it done. So
Yeah, and the next time a Ryan Day starting quarterback fails to develop into at least a pretty darn good quarterback over the course of the season will be the first time. So yeah, I think that's probably a safe bet that Kyle McCord, if he is the guy, turns into a significantly better quarterback by November than he is right now. And if and when Devin Brown is called upon, he's probably going to have the same general progression as well. So don't write it. Don't write anyone off yet. Don't burn your jerseys or anything like that. There is a decent chance that both of those guys end up being pretty darn good starting quarterbacks for Ohio State at some point in the future. Speaking of the future of Ohio State, got a couple recruits who were visiting over the weekend we got to talk about. It was, Youngstown State. This is not the big blow it out recruiting weekend, but we saw a lot of guys, the local guys, Tavian St. Clair was here and Sam Williams Dixon, the local guys who are going to be here for a lot of games. Those guys were all here. They brought in several other uncommitted Ohio prospects and Midwest prospects as well. But they also brought in 2 guys who are currently committed to other Power 5 programs. One of them is Nicholas Rodriguez. He is out of Florida, St. Thomas Aquinas High School, a place where Ohio State has pulled a few talented defenders over the years. Rodriguez is a linebacker currently committed to Mizzou. Alex, this is a name we talked about quite a while ago, and then it never really got to the point where he was really seriously in the mix to commit. Has that maybe changed a little bit now as some of the other names have come off their board at linebacker?
yeah, well, he's a guy I remember. So he visited, I think it was that first weekend in June, like that June 2nd weekend, he took an official visit. And when I did some poking around, they like him a lot. They liked him a lot. They were considering taking him regardless of what else happened. But I think, having Garrett Stover in the class, having Peyton Pierce in the class, feeling pretty good about Kingston Biliamuasa at that point. And maybe an outside chance at Edwin Spillman. It was them or Tennessee. I think they just felt like their relationship with Nick Rodriguez was good enough. They felt like he wasn't going. No disrespect to Missouri. I mean, I think they're building a pretty solid program there, but it's not like he was committing to Alabama or Georgia, or Michigan or Florida or Florida. Like Mizzou is clearly a step down from Ohio State, and I think that they felt that that was probably where the type of school he'd end up committing to, and that they didn't have to make the decision to push for him then and there when they had a couple other guys that I mentioned still on the board. And they obviously, the Nigel Glover thing worked out too, and that's kind of almost like getting another linebacker. So I think that they waited things out. They've seen the first couple games of film from this senior year. They liked him in the summer. I think they really like him after watching his film. And, he came up. It's an unofficial visit. He paid his own dime. He came up with, some of his South Florida Express teammates, but he's, that's Ohio State isn't paying for that trip. And he's not just coming for the fun to see Ohio State play Youngstown State. It's not like he's coming to the Ohio State-Penn State game. So I think that if Ohio State pushes for Nicholas Rodriguez, they're going to get him. I need to dig into whether that's going to happen, but my hunch is I don't think they would have told the kid to waste his time coming up from Florida if they weren't prepared to probably take his commitment. So my guess is he ends up coming into the Ohio State class at some point, and I wouldn't be shocked if it's in the near future.
All right, and the second guy we got to talk about is a Virginia Tech commit. That is Eric Mensah. He is a defensive end prospect, also for the class of 2024. That's a spot where Ohio State is definitely looking to add bodies. And, we had talked about Marquise Lightfoot potentially being a flip if Miami had a season that kind of spiraled. Well, Miami's season took a little bit of an upswing on Saturday with that win over Texas A&M, so we'll see how that continues to play out. But what do you know about Eric Mensah and where things stand with him in the Buckeyes right now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a ton. Mark had kind of had that scoop first out of our staff. Our staff kept it on the DL. You obviously spotted him down on the field before the game, snapped a great picture that we have on the site. But, I think you got Eric Mensah, I think he might be listed he might even still be listed as an edge or just a defensive lineman. He's 6'3", 290. That's an interior guy all the way to me. They got Justin Scott, who's the 5-star committed, and I think they feel pretty good about keeping his pledge. So when you have that situation, it gives you a little bit of flexibility. I don't think they felt like they need to take someone else. I think they were going to watch some film this fall, see who they like. I think this is a kid that fits that billing. He's not highly ranked. That doesn't really mean anything. Obviously, the coach's opinion weighs more than the stars. Sometimes the services do miss people. I think this is a kid that they really like. He's got high upside, and kind of same thing as Nick Rodriguez. I don't think that they would bring him in on an official visit if they weren't at least seriously considering pushing for a commitment and felt like they could get one. I think this weekend was probably just as much an interview and I don't want to say interrogation, but checking out Eric Mensah up close and personal, sizing him up, getting to know him, seeing how he interacts with the other players, the other recruits, seeing if he's a culture fit. So, as I said, pretty much a two-way interview. And again, I got it. We're recording this on Sunday at 8:00. I don't know what time he flew home, but gotta make the rounds on the sources over the next couple days and see how they feel about that one. But if he checked all the boxes, I think he probably already checked the boxes as far as what they like on the field from him. It's more the off the field stuff. And if he checked all those boxes and he made this trip himself as well, being a Virginia native who's committed to Virginia Tech, I think that there's probably a good chance he could end up in the class as well, as long as, again, he checked everything, the boxes on everything Ohio State was looking for.
All right, so we'll be keeping an eye on those two recruits and potential flip candidates at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Alex and Mark, obviously, very, very busy on the recruiting trail this time of year as we're heading into, only 3 months or so until early signing day, heading into the home stretch, which tends to be the time of year when things get a little nutso on the recruiting trail these days. So there'll be plenty of stuff to talk about there on the recruiting front at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also, this week, a little bit of quarterback talk. We're the first 15 minutes or so of this show heard a whole bunch of quarterback talk. You're probably going to hear a lot more quarterback talk one way or the other this week. We'll be hearing from Ryan Day on Tuesday. Should be lots of stuff to break down. And then, as Alex said, the defense for Ohio State has been real good through 2 weeks. They're going to get a real test this week from the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers and their prolific passing attack. We'll have plenty to talk about there as well. So make sure you are a subscriber at BuckeyeHuddle.com to get access to our team of insiders covering the team, covering X's and O's, covering recruiting, making you a smarter football fan, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. And of course, on all of our podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, just search Buckeye Huddle. We will find our podcasts. They are all free, and you can subscribe to them all. If you enjoy them, we ask you to leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps other folks find those shows, and we truly appreciate that. So that will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.